Hello there, Pete Tolman here, Private Mountain Games. You might know me as the star of the Space Quest Historian podcast, spacequesthistorian.com. I have been asked to give you SJW Snowflake Cucks a trigger warning. Tonight's episode is about political narratives in gaming. For those not as woke as myself, this may cause some problems. The four libtards around the table make a number of references to recent events, and suggest things that may offend your political sensibilities. For instance, Gary Millard makes some very banal points about far-right politics following recent elections in the United States, proving that his PhD is not worth the napkin it's scrawled on. Tro Plymouth is a fucking fairy, and thinks that punching political opponents is a bad idea. And Freddie Olsen is a card-carrying Nazi. Their guest is lovely, but she's a woman, and should not be voting anyway. They wanted me to say that while they make some flippant comments, they understand that we live in complicated times, and that their bullshittery should not be mistaken for cogent political analysis. For instance, all of them ridicule the idea of vigilante justice, and praise the rule of law as a means for dealing with extremist viewpoints, a possibly noble but ultimately flawed analysis of the situation. As Horkheimer and Adorno noted in their seminal work The Dialectic of Enlightenment, liberalism contains the very seeds of its destruction by allowing totalitarian regimes to take control of the means of state oppression, i.e. the law and police forces, to turn against them and their enemies, and cementing dominant worldviews that exclude all political, racial and gendered opponents. That is to say, capitalism sows the seeds for fascism. Fascism is not a perversion of capitalism, it is a logical conclusion of it. While it may be true that the rule of law in properly functioning capitalist societies has given rights and protections to religious worship, working men, women, black people, gay people, disabled people, and, one day perhaps, transgender and other minority groups, the fact that fascists debate the very foundations of those rights means that sometimes violence is the only way to silence and oppose their poisonous ideology. I couldn't possibly comment on this, other than to say, you are all fucking arseholes. Anyway, enjoy the podcast. Snowflakes.
Well, hello and welcome to episode 3 of season 4. I got it right this time of Seat Designers. My name is Frederick Olsen, and as usual, I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Dr. Garrett Millward.
Hello.
And the other lovely co-host, Mr. Troels Plymouth, the Space Quest Historian.
Hello, and the reason I'm laughing is this is the second time we're doing this, and Fred does it identically every time. Well, hello there!
And he almost got his own name wrong.
I'm just enthusiastic. Now, the third voice that you heard there among my lovely compatriots was not in fact Gareth or Trolls. It's this week's special guest. I might as well introduce you immediately now that you've made your presence known. Laney Berry of the St. Christopher School Lockdown. How are you doing, Laney?
Hi, I'm doing great.
We are.
This is my first time doing one of these things, so...
Really? Well, you probably think it's my first as well.
I would think that.
Yeah, we've been doing this for 4 seasons now. We haven't really gotten any better at it.
I'm a bit rusty, but I mean, you did say that I have my shtick going when I introduce it with a, well, hello there. So, you know, I got
the French podcast, celebrated for its excellence.
That's not our podcast. So anyway...
It is neither French nor celebrated for its excellence.
It is indeed neither. So what we're gonna talk about this week is kind of in the style of the times, because this thing just happened over in the US and someone punched a Nazi and there's like a comb over and it's all very, very ugly. So what we're going to talk about this week is political narratives. And Laney, let's get right out of the gate here. your game, St. Christopher School's Lockdown, is kind of a political story, isn't it?
We invited them.
No, it's totally okay. Well, here's the thing, though. The game itself is set around a political situation, but I would like to say that the game is more about the relationships of the people involved in it. So it's more about the human element within politics. It's more about like the relationships that can form within political environments and situations. But yeah, it is a very political game. But I do want to emphasize that I'm not stating that I am on one side or another. One of the things, as you guys know...
Oh, you have to do that. This is 2017. Come on. You either have to be
I do that
or
on
an
Facebook.
SJW.
I do that on Facebook. People can read my Facebook to know where
There
I'm
is
saying.
no middle
But
ground.
like,
You either punch the Nazis or you support them.
I was counting down how long it would take for us to get to the Nazi punching.
But why can't I punch them and support them?
They just need some tough love.
You know, I think that's actually their shared common language. They're just not used to other people punching them.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like when the liberals do it, they're sore losers. But when it's another person who's also a Nazi, it's just like friendly fighting. You know,
Yeah.
It's just like Fight Club.
And it's like they're bromans, you know. But yeah, it sounds to me as if what you're working on is a game that's focusing on how people of different creed come together during a political situation. Is that correct? So there's like this idea of...
There's actually, it's they come together at first in the game, certainly, but it's more about the way that people, even people with the same cause, even people who have essentially the same views, can easily become divided by the little things. In this game, one of the big factors is that they're all supporting the same cause, which is the fact that they are against the raising of school tuition fees, of university tuition fees across the country. And this is based on stuff that's actually been going on in the UK, where tuition fees were raised by almost, I would say, 300%.
Jesus.
A few years ago. Yeah, it was insane. And
we go to university for free in Denmark.
yeah, fuck you guys.
and the thing about England is that now the inflation is basically headed the same way.
So we'll have to raise them some more.
Look,
Sorry.
it's too soon, guys. It's too soon.
Nothing is too soon. I think actually things should be even sooner. Like, I think things should be said before they happen. Like, things should be laughed about, like, before they even happen.
Are you listening, Gareth? So we can finally say Toblerone now, right?
Yeah. You get
Marmite. The price of Marmite. No.
Tuition prices have been raised by 300%, and the amount of chocolate in your Toblerone has been decreased with about as much.
300%, yeah. Yep. But what I was going to say was, though, even though all the students who are protesting this are for the same cause, eventually they start to become divided because some of the students want to do the protest in a very peaceful, sort of united way, in a very ideological, positive way, without violence.
Yeah.
I mean,
let's all get together on the grassy knoll with our acoustic guitars and our headbands and yeah.
Exactly.
Wave
And our
kumbaya.
signs.
Yeah, let's kumbaya this shit out.
Then some kids show up, though. Some kids start to become very vocal about the fact that they want to start making bombs to fight against the police presence outside. They start wanting to, like, create acts of chaos, of anarchy. And I mean, I'm for anarchy in certain ways, but they start to be very clear that they want to make a bigger stand, even if that involves a more violent message. And I think, you know, what's interesting is that we've been seeing that during the inauguration in America. Like, you've been seeing
Incidentally, the most witnessed inauguration of all time.
Oh, yeah.
Alternative facts, people.
witness.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, alternative facts.
Sorry for spoiling the mood. I'm getting the feeling that this is an extremely interesting conversation already, but there's kind of like this dark mood hanging as a cloud over everything because we're all thinking of President Fuckface Van Clownstick.
Well,
so that's
you know
kind
what
of
it's like. Trevor Noah on The Daily Show said that it's kind of like a scene when the Disney villain comes into power, and it's kind of like when Scar becomes the leader of the lions in Lion King. It's kind of like that. It's kind of ominous. It's just oh shit, bad things are going to happen.
So that's why Trump was singing "Be Prepared" the other night.
Yeah.
I would just love for the guy who was, in charge of the sound system during the inauguration had somehow accidentally put on the Imperial March instead of the Stars and Stripes. That would have been terrific. And actually,
guys,
Laney,
we build the best Death Stars. Okay, there were no flaws.
There are no exhaust ports.
Better than that, come out to the Cantina band.
I suppose we should sort of make a disclaimer, even though we're already a good 10 minutes into the show or whatever, that what we usually shy away from talking politics on the show because we're pretty much, the sort of all-inclusive want to hug everyone. I mean, we're just a cuddly bunch. But I think that's going to go by the wayside for this particular episode because it's hard to discuss political narratives in games without actually talking politics.
You know what's funny, though, is that I consider myself moderate. I definitely left-leaning, but I do try to see all sides of the political argument. I do try to understand I can even understand where, for instance... Okay, I'm going to mention abortion, guys, but I can even understand where pro-life people are coming from. But there's a difference between politics and dictatorships when one viewpoint is being forced on everybody, and that is, slightly a different story.
Yes. Exactly, and if we're waving our colors, I'm going, because this is kind of a disclaimer for anything stupid I might say during this episode. I identify as
we've already been past that point.
Yeah, I know, but stupid politically. I mean, just in addition to regularly
No. There's no such thing as stupid politically. It's called presidential now.
Oh yes, okay. You see where we're going with this? Anyway, yeah, I identify as a naive idealist, which means that I don't really understand politics. I just have an idea of how things are supposed to be. But once you get into the nitty-gritty details, then I lose track of whatever it was we're talking about. Yeah, so I'm like on the case of abortion, for instance, I'm clearly in favor of everyone should be in control of their own bodies. But then if I start getting into an argument with someone who's pro-life, then I will lose track and my eye will catch something shiny off to the side and I'll look at Kitty.
Here's what I think. I think that of course, pro-life is where
yesterday.
Pro-choice is where I stand on the issue. But I do think that people who have pro-life beliefs are obviously entitled to those beliefs, but they should not enforce their religious beliefs on other people. And especially on women who want to make choices with their own bodies.
Yes. At the risk of sounding trite, right on, sister.
Yeah, let me point out that we don't want to alienate anyone listening to this, except maybe the Nazis. You can heil off and do something else. That's
why I'm saying that everybody should be entitled to their opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I think. And I don't think that liberals should force their opinions on the right either. That's another thing I do think is important. It's both sides that need to take responsibility for making sure they're not being, they're not speaking over the other side.
Right. Well, that's kind of what I wanted to ask you, because it sounds like you're not rubbing it in people's faces, right? But you're kind of trying to make a statement by making this game that is set against a political conflict as a backdrop, but it seems to me like you're highlighting the little nuances, the gray areas in there. Is that a reflection of you as a person going into the game?
Yes. I think so often these political discourses and these arguments between people become black and white. Like, you're either punching a Nazi or you're a Nazi sympathizer, right? Like, there's no gray areas. You can't, for instance, you can't think that peaceful protest is fine while also being against Nazis. You have to violently go against Nazis. No, of course that's not right.
So what has your experience been making such a game that is so, left field, if you don't mind an unintentional pun?
Well, let me tell you a little bit of background about where this game came from.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. I am half Chilean. While my dad is from Scotland, my mom is from Chile. And she grew up during the Pinochet era. Which was not a good time.
Yeah.
But basically, give me 1 second. I am just.
She's getting her passport, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm getting my passport just to make sure I'm not
showing
out of country.
Showing it on the radio. It's not going to work.
We will have to see your tax returns at the end of the episode.
Fuck. Not until they're audited.
Oh yeah, sure.
No.
Sure.
Okay, but one of the things that started happening in around 2004 was that students across the country began protesting in huge amounts based on all kinds of things. But the main facts were that, the main facts, not the alternative facts.
We have to clarify that in this day and age.
Just clarify that.
We can't just do facts anymore. It's too boring. We have alternative facts and genuine facts.
The main facts, genuine facts, alternative facts. We've got
Thanks, Orwell.
Telefacts.
Oh, fuck off.
Speaking of Orwell, did you hear that, 1984 is on the top sellers list at Amazon again, top 5.
Oh dear.
I'm kind of glad somehow, because it's one of my favorite books, and I'm not a book reader, so the fact that I've even read it is amazing.
Well, that's because the White House
anyway,
has been instructed to use it as a guidebook.
But anyway, they started protesting. They started protesting against. They were gradually raising the costs in standardized testing. They were raising costs for school materials, for books, for transports to get to schools, and for, I believe, tuition itself. And it was making it harder and harder for the lower classes to be able to afford quality education in Chile. And students started protesting just across the entire country. There was at one point something like 100 schools protesting at one time, and people were actually occupying their schools. Students were marching into their schools, kind of taking over during the night and staying in their schools for a couple of weeks, maybe months at a time.
Like barricading the whole fucking place?
Yeah. Shutting it down.
There's a part of me that's really going, hell yeah. You can't see, but I'm shaking my fist defiantly in the air going, hell yeah.
Well,
I'm getting Alice Cuba lyrics stuck on my head.
or Pink Floyd, right? Another brick and roll.
Yeah. Definitely.
But that was really cool because one thing that happened and came out of this was that some of the leaders, because there were leaders who were the spokespeople for this movement, they actually became their own political, not a party of their own, but they became sort of political spokespeople after they were old enough, because at that point they were only 16, but who are now sort of being respected and whose ideas back in 2005 are sort of they're making moves towards changing everything. They're changing the way schools are handled, the way, all of this is handled. But the thing is, these protests, even after even since 2005, they're still going on. A couple of years ago, my brother and my sister-in-law were in Chile. They were just visiting my family and so on, and they got stuck outside right next to a protest where the cops were spraying tear gas everywhere. They got tear gas just because they were near a protest.
Jesus.
Yeah, and that's just really incredibly common. Like, that's almost just like, oh, you're going to travel in Chile, you're going to pass by a protest. That's something that's still going on.
And that's been going on since 2004. These people do not let up.
2005, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and
I mean, good on them. But you'd think something
name.
would have happened by now.
Yeah, it even has its own name. They call it the March of the Penguins because they wear like the little school uniforms that look kind of like penguin suits. So It's the March of the Penguins.
That is so cute if it didn't have tear gas in it.
I think somebody made a manga about it.
Probably.
Somebody made like a comic about it. But like the thing is, so that's where I originally got the idea because I was living in Chile in 2005. And my cousin actually attended a few of these protests and he got to see what they were like inside, like living inside of these occupied schools.
Before he got blinded by tear gas.
Before the tear gas, yeah.
That's not even funny.
No, I'm sorry. Inappropriate jokes. I'm sorry.
He got to witness what it was like inside, and he said that the weird part was that all these protests were so different from each other. Like, he went to one protest where it was just like Woodstock. Everyone was smoking weed all the time. Everyone was drunk. Everyone was kind of just like listening to music, staying up late, partying. And then he went to another protest, and this was like at a girls' school, but like they were allowing, I guess, guys in because he was a guy. But where they had like strict bedtimes, right? They had like at 9:00, lights out, everybody, it's time to sleep, and like really scheduled like everything. They had sort of breakfast hour and everything was really neat and orderly. So it just seemed to depend on who the leaders were and who was sort of leading the protests, and so how that was managed. And I found that really interesting.
That's interesting because that's one of my main I would say problems with protests in general. At least over here in Denmark, for instance, we have this thing on May the 1st, which is this grand big the Workers' Day, and everyone gathers in this huge park in Copenhagen, and they all get drunk and don't bother listening to politicians who get up and tell them everything is going to be fine if we just keep struggling and all this shit. And it's one of those lax kind of it's kind of an excuse to go out and get drunk and be in a big crowd, but we're not really changing anything. We're not really doing anything. It's a protest in big, huge fuck off quotation marks. So to see someone actually put on a protest where it kind of means something, like the Women's March they just had over in the States.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that fucking rocked. I mean, shit. Of course, a couple of bad apples, people just using it as an excuse to loot. For some reason, it always brings out some assholes and such. But just the sheer numbers of it and,
and across the world, that's what really impressed me. Like, just like I heard it was over 30 countries who were simultaneously protesting as well.
Mm-hmm. And
so how do you?
We just stated this show a lot. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we did as soon as we mentioned President Fuckface von Clownstick, but I kind of wanted to ask you how you convey these things in a game then, because I feel we're kind of going off the beaten path a bit by getting into the main political issues, and I kind of want to steer it back towards how do you take these conflicts that are all essentially very human and then convey them in an interactive piece of fiction, what you're working on.
Good point. Games. I remember games.
Well, okay. Well, this, I will tell you, the narrative for this game takes place within just one school that is being occupied, right, in the UK. And this, I was going to say that after this happened in Chile, this did begin to happen in the UK. And this was after I'd had the idea, too. So I was, like, really shocked because I'd already decided I was going to move the idea from Chile to the UK just because I knew the UK better. So it takes place in a certain school, and the protagonist of the game is Kaylee, who is not she's not a student at this school, but she is running because she is escaping from loan sharks to who she owes quite a big amount of money to. And Kaylee is actually in her late 20s. She's not a teenager by any means, but she's just trying to get away. And she sees this crowd of kids who are all carrying signs and, fuck politics, fuck everything, free education. Blah, blah.
Anarchy in the UK.
Yes, it's anarchy in the UK. And she kind of loses herself amongst them, trying to get away from the people who are chasing her. And she ends up entering the school with them, thinking it would be a great way to escape.
They'll never find me in this cloud.
They'll never find me. Yeah, exactly. And so, she ends up falling asleep there and wakes up the next morning like, wait, where am I? What? And she realizes I'm in this school filled with teenagers who are doing something. Like, she's not even sure what they're protesting. She's not sure about anything. So you as the player don't know what the cause is. You don't know who these students are. You don't know what school it is. You don't know anything. So both you and Kaylee are in the same position, figuring out what are these, like, why is everybody protesting? Why is everybody here? What is going on? And
make sure you buy the game, even though she's already spoiled what it is they're fighting for in this podcast.
Yeah, it sounds very good.
But like, the interesting thing is, this follows Kaylee's story, which she doesn't give a, I mean, okay, she has her own political views, but her interest is more, what the fuck am I going to do about these loan sharks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she's kind of like the blank slate for the player, I guess.
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
So
and you can actually begin to lean towards sort of different political views within the school, but you can start to sort of express your own feelings about how the protest should be handled by making different choices.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, is this one of those choice in like a diverging paths kind of thing? If you start hanging out with these kids, then you're kind of down this path, and conflict will erupt.
Here's the thing: conflict's going to erupt no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter what Kaylee does. You can side with one side or the other, and this will be reflected. And it will change the way certain situations and conversations play out. There is one more or less definitive ending, though. I mean, the branching paths will converge because we are leaving it open for what comes next, which we are not sure of yet. Depending on how much...
Oh, sorry, do go on.
I was going to say, depending on whatever funding we can get for a further episode, or... if we could maybe get a publisher.
It's really
and that's also
though.
a political argument that we're not getting into.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're definitely not getting into that one. But it sounds really interesting to me, Laney, because I get the idea that when people are complaining about political games in this current climate, wrongfully or rightfully, they complain about games that tell them what they should think and what they shouldn't think, whereas the way you've constructed this, the player is kind of led on a learning experience where they get to form their views along with the character they're controlling. So there is no opinion enforced by you.
Absolutely, that's an incredibly important thing to me, is to not just say these are the good guys and these are the bad guys. Okay, no, it's just this is what this character thinks. This other character thinks differently. Here's another character who has a third opinion. And here's Kaylee, who kind of is in the middle of everything and is more concerned about how the fuck she's going to find the money to pay these loan sharks. Like, she doesn't even have like a major opinion either way. Mm-hmm. So it's really, it's kind of just being surrounded by political opinions and just trying to do what's best for herself and best for her own situation, while navigating these kids who are incredibly passionate about what they're doing.
Right. So I kind of want to...
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, go for it. I wasn't saying anything.
Oh, okay. I just kind of want to ask, and this is also to get Gareth and Trolls involved a bit. Now we have this game here that... has a political side to it in this fashion But can we think of any games that do it differently and why we like that or why we don't?
Yeah,
Over to
Police
you,
Quest
people.
4.
Oh.
Police Quest 4
Space.
is full.
Oh, I thought you
of-
said Space Quest 4.
Oh no! Space Quest 4 is more sort of dystopian, kind of science fiction-y kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, politics is in everything, but I think, I'm not sure whether latex babes fit on the
Actually,
full
in
compass
Space Quest
ones.
5, who's the guy who the captain or the guy with
Captain
the black
Quirk.
hair?
The
Yes.
black toupee, Captain Quirk.
I started
Definitely,
thinking
definitely a William
thinking
Shatner
that he
parody.
looked like. I started thinking of Trump.
Well,
I started thinking imagine Trump with that hair.
Yeah.
well, in
Well,
Space Quest 4,
imagine Trump with any genuine hair.
well,
That's
you've got
impossible.
Space Quest 4, you've got the supercomputer, which is like a total dictatorship. Everyone who doesn't agree gets turned into cyborgs. And so I guess you could go, but anyway, back to Gareth, Police Quest 4.
Sorry, Gareth. I never
well,
played.
We always talk over Gareth.
Yeah, I'm used to it. It's fine. It's fine.
Oh,
There's no comeback to that.
yeah, we all just kind
Yeah.
of go, oh, and
Yeah.
we kind of look down and feel ashamed of ourselves.
Police Quest 4, tell us how Daryl F. Gates thought of the act of choking members of a certain
Demographic.
skin color, a certain
Yeah.
demographic.
Yeah, well, I mean, just even leaving aside the sort of the politics of the guy himself. I mean, it's almost inevitable that in a series of games made by law enforcement officials, that they are going to present law enforcement from a particular point of view. But what's really interesting about Police Quest 4 is you get the sort of the dare posters all over the place. The sort of the anti-drugs thing that was going on in the early 90s in the United States. I mean, aside from just the way that the sort of the inner cities are portrayed from a demographic perspective and behaviours and various other things, it's very political. I mean, I don't know with that game whether it stands out more in retrospect from a sort of looking back at the historical context of the 90s, but it does very much portray this view of law enforcement as working in very difficult conditions against a populace that doesn't want to be policed, and not really going far into why that might be the case.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, do that. We do that all the time.
Yeah,
You felt
I was
felt
gonna
awful
say-
every single time you tried to butt in, didn't you? Because you were afraid you were going to talk over poor little Gareth.
No, but I was thinking of the game. Has anyone here played This Is the Police?
no.
Assist the police?
This is the Police.
This is the police. No, can't say that I have.
It's kind of an adventure simulator where you play as the police chief in an unnamed American town, and your job every day as you deal with your own personal life and your own sort of political views is to send out different police groups, police officers, police crews to...
Oh, I've seen this. I've seen a Let's Play of it. Sorry, I know exactly what you mean now. Yeah, you get this overhead map and you dispatch police officers.
You dispatch police officers and
you hire new ones?
depending on how much the mayor likes you, like he can tell you, no, we're cutting down your police force, so you'll have like 4 policemen, or if the mayor agrees with the job you're doing, he can give you more policemen, more funding, and you have to send policemen to deal with. You have to figure out which crimes are valid to send the policemen to deal with. So you'll get somebody on the phone going. There is a clown selling drugs, like literally a guy dressed as a clown selling drugs, like on the corner of the street where I live.
And now he's running for president.
Yes. But sometimes you get calls that are like, and these are literally things that happen in the game. There is a gay rights protest going on. So far, they're behaving peacefully. Should we send out police to sort of tell them to shut it down? And there's like tons of situations like this. And but during the game, the mayor will tell you things. For instance, at the moment, we don't think it's a good idea for us to have very many black policemen because we've noticed that black policemen are being targeted for crimes. Black policemen are being attacked. So fire all of your black policemen, please. And that is actually one thing you have to do. Otherwise, the mayor will lower his satisfaction rate with you. Or he will tell you, you have to fire all the policemen who are older than a certain age. Or he will tell you, if you do not stop this women's march, I think there is a women's march in the game. If you do not stop this women's march, I'm going to take away like one of your slots for like a policeman. And it's just, so it's just really, really well done in the way that it talks about sort of just the overarching racism, all the politics. It's just really interesting.
And you're just kind of caught in the middle. You get like an overhead map, and you're supposed to dispatch police officers. Sometimes they're too far away. Sometimes the police officers you've hired are complete losers who don't know what the hell they're doing. Yeah. Sometimes they come back with erroneous information that you then
Sometimes
have
they
to
show up to work. Sometimes the police show up to work drunk.
Yeah.
And like if you send them out, they die because they get into car wrecks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good game. I forgot what it was called, but now that you've reminded me, I'm going to have to go back and look at that Let's Play.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It sounds a little bit like Papers, Please to me in the sense that it kind of offers an alternate view, and that was the one I wanted to bring up, where you kind of get and like not only does the game actually make you depressed because it's this menial work that just goes on and on and on and on, and you're basically just a drone looking at people's papers and trying to decide who gets in and who you have to throw out. And there are also all these consequences for you and your family, and you know, you may be executed, you may be deported, all of these things, and it never outright makes a political point, but it does answer that age-old question. Well, why didn't the people of Nazi Germany stand up? Why didn't the people of the USSR stand up? Why don't the people of North Korea stand up? It kind of puts all this weight on your shoulders and tries to make you feel like, well, what is it like being a drone of this technocratic, dystopian, almost totalitarian regime?
Mm-hmm. And actually, there's another game I played recently, which is called Beholder. Has anyone seen or heard of that?
Beholder.
Not
like Eye of the Beholder.
No, I'm afraid not again. I mean, despite having a podcast about games, we play so few games.
It's okay. I play a lot of games for research. Just research. You play the landlord in this building block. And this is clearly a very sort of dystopian, authoritarian country. And your job as the landlord is you are sort of placed there by the government, and they want to make sure that nobody in the building is going against the governmental laws and regulations. So your job is to place security cameras in the different buildings. You search through their apartments when they are not there, interview them, and report anything dangerous back to the government.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah. So you can put cameras, you can put microphones, and, you know, you can rob their apartments, basically. And
Can you put tear gas canisters in their underwear drawers?
No, but I'm pretty sure you could probably call somebody to do so.
Oh, yeah. Secret Services. Hi. We have an underwear drawer situation, if you know what I mean.
The thing is, though, you can play
sticky tape.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. You can play you can play it like pro-government, and you can just do everything they say. Or you also have the choice to warn the citizens you are being investigated. You should try to get out of the country while you still can. You can try to even like help them by being able to get out. You can try not reporting things you find just to help the citizens you don't think it's fair towards. It's really interestingly done. and there's all kinds of sort of mini side quests, sort of like mini little stories where, it's really cool, and the graphics are really interesting too.
Yeah, so it's I mean, most of the political games I've seen have been these kind of one note. There's one where you have to, throw this not Social Security, or Secret Service guy. Sorry, brain fart there.
Never get the two mixed up.
Yeah, they're a little different.
The Social Security service.
Throw the Secret Service guy in front of a bullet to stop Donald Trump from being assassinated. I think it's just called Mr. President. It's one of those one note kind of games. And the games we've been talking about so far have been more of the having the player ask themselves what they feel about certain topics. I mean, Papers, Please obviously has this. Do you let your family starve, or do you help the resistance get into the country? This landlord game that you mentioned, I have the sense that whenever you're asked to put cameras in people's rooms, you also get to have conversations with them about how lonely they feel and how they wish the government would get off their backs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, building a political narrative in a game seems to, at least if you don't want to shove the political message down people's throats, then
that's what Police Quest 4 does.
Which is what Police Quest 4 does. Then you kind of have to have as you do in St. Christopher's, you have to have this blank slate character where you as the player is, bombarded with all these different viewpoints, and you have a certain amount of authoritative actions you can perform, which will, cause effects on, the NPCs around you. Can we think of any games where you're just basically caught in the middle and you don't have any authority to exert? You basically, things happen to you. St. Christopher's actually kind of sounds like it does that a bit, and then you get to align yourself. But can we think of any others where you're not in a position of authority or deciding people's fates?
I do think it is a factor. I mean, it's not exactly what you're asking for, but of course, Papers, Please does also have a random generator. So there is this thing that, okay, you're in control of other people's lives, but I believe that random shit can just happen to you.
Actually, I don't think so. I think I've replayed it a few times, and I think that on each day, it's like events are programmed to happen on certain days, at least as far as I've noticed. Like certain events will always happen on day 5. They won't be randomized. I think you get the same visitors like on every specific day.
There are some of them that are, I think, as far as I understand, some of them are randomly generated, and then there are some that will always be there inevitably. So that's a very good point. That doesn't apply then.
I get.
Then I don't know any games like that.
I'm trying to think.
Okay, let's. The reason I ask is because when we were at Adventure X, there was this guy talking about presenting real life historical events in computer games, and one of the games that he showed was basically them walking around. Was it an African village? Guys, help me out. An African village of people who have to go to refugee camp or whatever.
Oh yes.
Remember that?
Yeah,
one?
that was Geo Hopmeyer talking about. I can't remember what the title of the talk was, but you can find it on YouTube, and it was an excellent talk actually.
Yeah. And he showed a screenshot of another person in the middle of a protest. Again, I forget the actual country that the protest took place in, but it was just a screenshot of this huge crowd, and then there's one guy in center frame, and then at the bottom of the screen there were these throw rock, don't throw rock. Press one button to throw rock, press another button to not throw rock. And it was depicting like a real life protest that happened in real life back in the 70s or 80s or something like that. And that's kind of what I was getting at. If you're thrust into a situation where you don't want to be, and stuff will happen to you.
Then I've got another one from that talk. Incidentally, I do remember the name of it. I believe it was called Docu Games. Isn't that right? The first game he presented was a game called Phone Story, where you follow your mobile phone, your modern smartphone, from basically harvesting the raw resources by whipping African kids to collect shit in the ground that you use to make the cell phone components
Holy
with.
shit.
Then you move on to a factory in China where you're trying to kind of like one of those ancient
Like a
fireman
sweatshop?
games where you have to prevent people from jumping and committing suicide. And
Oh
that
my
that
God.
actually does exactly what you're asking for, Trolls. It thrusts
Yeah.
you into a situation that you just do not want to deal with because it's cruel, but you're forced to witness the birth of this cell phone that we all run around with in our respective pockets.
Yeah, and
and
the joke
I've
was
even
that sorry.
No, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say the joke that he said was that it was actually developed for the iPhone and it lasted about an hour on the App Store before it was removed. Anyway, go on, Laney.
Yeah, no, but I was going to say that I've seen games where you are placed in the position of managing. This is like one of these time management games, kind of like Diner Dash, right? Where you have, but you have to manage a sweatshop where, you know, yeah, exactly. But it's intentionally bad. It's like you have to make sure your employees, like, you know, don't starve. You have to kind of keep them at least somewhat fed, and it's just like really sort of shocking, like how bad conditions can be, because this game I'm talking about, I think, was actually sponsored by, I want to say maybe not the BBC, but ITV, something, and it was like based on research, and they were trying to prove a point. They were trying to prove, you know, sweatshops are bad, guys.
Right.
There's a 14-year-old kid going, I did not know that.
Oh shit!
Wow, my life is...
Throw out my Justin Bieber shirts now.
Yeah, I gotta find another job. But what I was gonna say, have there been any of you guys played Orwell?
No, I've heard of it.
I've heard of it as well.
But I haven't. No, sorry. I like the title.
Yeah, probably the title.
That one's a really, I feel like I'm just like teaching you guys about all the new games.
That's what you're here
out
for.
there now.
Yeah,
Well,
go on.
It sounds like all I do is play games while you guys actually do, you know, things. Real things.
Yeah, well,
we're
talk
just
to each
blank
other, and
slates.
Gareth will play a sample at one point, and we'll go off and do something ungodly, and then we'll see each other next week.
Doesn't mean anything. I thought I'd just play it.
Of course. Well, Orwell is about, you play as another government worker, shock, who your job is to filter through social media, to filter through people's online presence, and to find evidence that this is like for certain targets of interest, as the government puts it, and find evidence that they are or are not terrorists. And like to just look, for instance, somebody posts on their social media something like, fuck the government, okay? So then you can take that and you can put it into your file as dislikes the government. Mm-hmm. And you can start like collecting evidence to prove one point or another point, to prove the way that these individuals are portrayed by the government. And it's just incredibly interesting because sometimes there will be conflicting evidence, like somebody will post, you know, these cops fucking deserve to die, okay? These cops are assholes and they deserve to die. But just like angry, drunken post. Mm-hmm. And then the next day they will post, I didn't mean that. I was just drunk and, you know, I didn't mean what I said. But you can choose to post the drunken post and ignore the sort of sober post, or you can post the sober post.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I think if I may steer the conversation a tiny bit, we've talked a lot about in relation to political storytelling in games. We've talked a lot about the protagonist having to be a clean slate, so the player can identify with whatever they want to identify with in the political climate of the game. One of the talking points that we tried sending you on Facebook before the podcast started was, well, how do you then write for the NPCs, the ones that have these conflicting political viewpoints? I mean, being a person, a human being, and a writer, you obviously have a political leaning, and having to put words into the mouths of characters whose political convictions are so far removed from your own, without making them caricatures, without making them, down, 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 down. How do you go about doing that?
Right. Okay, here's the thing. The main, political figures who are the actual members of the government are very much not present in the story. This is mostly about the kids who are in this protest. These are the ones you actually hear, the ones you actually speak to. Mm-hmm. You don't really get to communicate with any of the sort of government who are the ones who are imposing the ridiculous restrictions on the schools. But you will hear from kids within the protest who do have very different opinions. For instance, the ones who think that homemade bombs are a good idea.
Yeah.
And when I write for these characters, I just try to imagine what could make somebody angry enough, what could get somebody to that point where they think violence is the answer. And I try to write that in an honest way. I try to write that as somebody who's incredibly angry and who feels incredibly betrayed by the government might react. Because I do think I don't agree with it, and I don't think violence is ever the answer, but I do think that is a mindset that makes sense and that is legitimate. It doesn't mean that this person is a sociopath. It just means that they're incredibly angry and they feel that the only available option is to do something violent to get the attention of the government, right? And, you just have to write it as if the character is a human being. You have to think, what could make me angry enough to get to that point, and then try to, channel those feelings and write in that way. Even if you could never get angry enough to blow something up, you have to feel, but what if I was, as angry as I possibly could be? And just,
So basically, put yourself in the shoes of someone. There's what I'm kind of hearing you say is that you're trying to skirt around the kind of obvious, if you look at American TV shows, you look at American TV cop shows, for instance, those, throwaway special victims unit kind of shows. Yeah. They usually have, maybe there's maybe they pick up a prostitute who became a prostitute because she was sexually molested by her dad or something like this. There's always one of those
slow piano music.
Yeah, something like that. It's one of those go-to cliches kind of things. And sometimes with violent protests, for instance, you could maybe this kid got picked on before early in his life, so that's why he turned violent, or he's just a complete fucking psychopath. How do you skirt around these obvious cliches so that's why that person is like this? How do you make those feel human and complicated and not just the total sum of their upbringing kind of thing?
Well, I think upbringing will always play a huge part in it. I mean, I think for the most part, kids who are raised in happy, healthy, functioning households probably won't bring bombs to school. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But, so, I mean, that is explored to a point. I mean, the characters in this environment who are more inclined to violence are ones who have not unhealthy they don't come from unhealthy households, but they have more sort of distant relationships to their parents. But the character who is pro-violence actually comes from a very kind of comfortable, sort of wealthy upbringing. He is actually has a lot of friends at school. He's very sort of well-known, popular. It's just that I think he is just an angry person, and I think anger manifests itself in all kinds of ways. And sometimes you just want to blow shit up.
Yeah, that's
actually,
why I listen to metal
music. Take that off the record.
Given that this is sort of set in a British school, what kind of school is it set in? Because you can't write anything in England without class, I don't think.
There we go.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. This is in a lot of ways based on a school I went to in the UK. Which was a second form college called Strode's College in Egham.
In Surrey.
In
very
Surrey,
nice.
yes.
Let's go blow shit up.
And it was actually, it wasn't, actually prestigious, but in this game, I'm making it sort of like more for kids with money. It's a little bit more expensive. But the kids you will find there are all very much a mixture of the middle classes with the occasional sort of lower class scholarship students. The working class, sorry. Lower class is not the word used in the UK anymore.
Peons, yes.
The peons, yes.
The proles.
But
To use an
it's mostly
Orwellian term?
The trolls.
Oh, fuck off.
Yeah. But the thing is, this is very much a school that prides itself on being one of the sort of higher institutions in the UK. So the sort of more working class end of the spectrum, they will all be scholarship students who are there due to their educational sort of talents or to their, sports scholarships or whatever it is.
Yeah.
We didn't really want you here, but it turns out you're smart, so we have to let you in.
Yes, exactly. And actually, Roger,
So many schools like that.
the character Roger, who is the one who is heading up the protest, who began it, is actually a scholarship student who comes from a working class family. And the character of Martin, who is the one who starts to sort of try to take over the protest a little bit and condone violence and to say, bombs, blah, blah. He comes from an upper class family. So it's kind of interesting because those two actually begin to clash, and you find out that their families actually have their own sort of background relationships with each other. And you find out that Roger. Well, I don't want to get into too much because it's kind of.
I can hear the gears grinding in your head, just going. How can I put?
As I try not to ruin my own game for everybody. But you find out that Roger and Martin are both related in far more ways than just being on opposite sides of the political fence. Yes.
You find a Valentine's card in his underwear drawer next to a can of mace.
Well, yeah, of course. Yes, I'm just trying to inspire people to write romantic fan fiction about Roger and Martin.
Oh yeah. For those.
Plenty of that goes on at public schools as well.
Can I? Because we're kind of coming up on the end times, as I'm fond of saying. Because
Yes.
That's a bit dramatic, isn't it?
Microcosmic end times. The podcast is about to end. I did kind of want to bring Gareth a little bit in because he's been very quiet this episode, and that's a pity because he's the most.
I don't know. As always, I'm very interested in the conversation you're having, and I'm having a lovely old time just sat here at the back. It's great.
Oh, but it's
Gareth has been chatting a lot, actually, I thought.
But it's a pity because of the three hosts here, Gareth is clearly the most intelligent because he has a PhD.
No. The most educated. There is very much a difference between those two things.
Now, there's also a question of history, and that's what I wanted to get at. If you're going to write a political narrative, be it a game or a book or a movie or whatever, you have to have some sort of grasp on political situations. And there's this phrase that I'm sure you'll sigh when you hear because it's repeated so often. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So, of course, you have to. Yeah, there it was. Actually, it was Laney who sighed. I'm kind of surprised with that.
I didn't sigh. I went, ho, ho, ho.
Ho, ho, ho. Yes, let us smoke a cigar and lean back and tell each other
yes,
stories.
good chap. A good chap.
Santa Claus coming down the chimney.
Now, what I wanted to get at, Dr. Millwood.
There we go.
Thank you. If you are going to write a political story, do you feel you owe it to yourself to start, studying history and, what happened? If you're going to write a protest story like Laney does, should you sit down and research what happened with the student protest in the 60s and all of this stuff? Or can you feasibly go in and, be almost like a 14-year-old fan fiction writer and just go, this is the world as I see it kind of thing?
Well, I mean, one of the advantages of doing it in a school, actually, is that the students won't have a particularly long political memory. I mean, you only really start to pay attention to stuff when you sort of get into double figures, I think, and it really depends on your upbringing as to whether it may be even later than that. So, I mean, it's a bit difficult. I don't... What's interesting about student protests probably now, and the ones that Laney was describing from Chile in the mid-2000s, is that they probably don't borrow a huge amount from the 1960s as much as people want to ascribe some kind of link between the two. I mean, there's obviously parallels, but I don't think the two are necessarily linked.
Right.
I think where learning about those protests might be interesting is that you might be able to then find some stories in them. I mean, what happened at Kent State, for example,
So
would be one way of ending the game in a pretty horrific way, I suppose.
But Laney, did you do a lot of past student protest research other than what happened in Chile in the 2004?
Other than what happened in Chile in the 2000s, I dabbled in it. I will admit I did not do like an extensive amount prior to, I would say, the 90s, because I did want to focus on the attitudes and the beliefs and the sort of defining characteristics of what is going on in the sort of minds of kids who are more Generation X, Generation Y. And I do think that it is very much its own creature. It's the motivations are very different. The points of view are very different, and what they're fighting for is different. And while I do think there would be lessons to be learned, and like Gareth said, stories to be told from the other ones, I did try to focus because there is a lot to be learned from the Chilean and from the British protests in themselves, and there's a lot of material for those to go through as well.
I actually want to dwell a bit on what you're saying now, if I may, because we're coming up on ye olde end time, so we kind of have to wrap this up. But
do we have to?
Yeah, sadly.
Well, we don't strictly have to, but it might be a good idea. We have to get sleep and all that overrated shit.
Isn't it like 9 o'clock there?
One thing that I do want to kind of ask you, which is kind of in the same which is kind of in the same vein as what you're talking about now, is we've had this talk about writing NPCs that are human and having this protagonist who's kind of a blank slate, who is being subjected to all these various political stimuli and trying to form an opinion based on that along with the player. Yes, stimuli. This makes my nipples hard. Now, what I kind of want to ask you is...
That's a Space Quest reference. Don't get excited.
Well, you don't know if I actually meant it. I was just quoting Gary. But anyway, speaking of you as a game designer, has working on a game with this kind of political thing going broadened your own horizon? Have you learned something? Have you formed new opinions based on what you've made?
No.
Nah.
And on that bobsled, it's time to...
No. We'll let the nice lady
Let's
answer.
make St. Christopher's great again. Let's make St. Christopher's great. St. Christopher's is the best game ever made.
You know what? If you get an alternative ending in St. Christopher's, it should just have this big flash that goes up, alternative fact.
That would be like...
No, but I actually think that it has broadened my understanding and my knowledge, but it's only... I found that I'm a very sort of solid person in that I haven't really changed my personal beliefs in a very big way since I would say I was 17, 18. From 18 on, my political, moral, sociological beliefs have remained very consistent. And so throughout the making of this game, I've only found that everything I've learned, everything I've researched, everything I have found myself looking into during this entire thing has only strengthened my my beliefs. I found that everything has supported what I already thought. So I just kind of felt like very smug. You know, I was just like, yeah. See,
And that goes back to my favorite Orwell quote. The best books are the ones that tell you the things you already know.
yeah, so here's the thing, though. I do sometimes worry that maybe I'm in a bit of a kind of... I worry because I've seen so many people who clearly think differently, especially in America. But I worry, am I in some kind of liberal circle jerk? And am I missing something?
You are now, right now.
Yeah.
Apparently, yeah.
Totally
No,
agree.
but I just... This is the thing. Even in my game, I can get into the mind of people who believe in violence. I can get into the mindset of people who believe that raising tuition prices by 300% is acceptable. But I can't get into the mindset of people who think that, for instance, killing protesters is okay.
Now, that's a tough one.
Yeah, which...
It's not really, though, is it? I mean, don't kill people.
Don't kill people, especially peaceful protesters. And that is something that is actually going into discussion in America right now.
Mm-hmm.
It is,
With the
yeah.
whole Nazi punching. First we punch the Nazi, then do we set him
No,
on?
I mean, it's not Nazi punching. It's that somebody's introduced a bill where it would be legal to kill protesters.
Oh.
Like even peaceful protesters, if they were holding up traffic. That is all it would take for them to...
Well, how dare they?
Yeah,
right?
that would be a I mean, imagine a game set in like Armenia during the genocide, for instance. How can you get into the mindset of these soldiers
Sounds
who
fun.
Yeah, game of the
Good
year.
time.
I mean, how do you put yourself in the mindset of soldiers blindly following orders to basically slaughter all of these people because your government says that they're not human or they're subhuman or whatever? That's a tough one.
I would find it incredibly hard to write for that sort of mindset. I don't know if I could write for that without resorting to obviously brainwashed, obviously sort of indoctrinated guy, you know.
Yeah, or just go completely
easy to
cartoonish.
watch.
Just, like huge
Yeah.
belly laughs every time they go, I killed them. Whoa.
Laugh track. Yeah.
Oh, that would be so awful. A sitcom about the Armenian genocide.
Well, I think, yeah,
That's our genocide.
yeah, I think we're coming up on the point where the ideas are kind of starting to go bad. So if you guys don't mind, I kind of want to take us into the ending spiel by first asking, Laney, in as few words as Gareth will use on average during the course of an episode of this show, do you have anything to plug apart from St. Christopher's? Where can people find you online? Where can they engage politically with you about this game of yours?
And can you shut Fred up?
The best place to find me is just on Facebook. I am completely shit at Twitter in every sense of the word. I don't get Twitter. I feel like some kind of like, yeah, I feel like some kind of grandmother who is just like, I don't get these modern technologies. But Twitter, yeah, no. I mean, I have a Twitter for St. Chris, but yeah, just Facebook is Laney Berry. And you can find me and you can argue with me and you can mock me and you can, like my pictures maybe. I don't know, whatever.
Well, you have a cute dog.
I have an adorable dog. Actually, I was planning on making a game about Pomeranians next, and that is not a...
Just to get the taste of politics out of your mouth. And now look at the cute puppy.
Well, actually, the game about Pomeranians would be about a rule of Pomeranians who are ruling a dictatorship in Pomerania, in the country of Pomerania, and it would be sort of about doggy...
Between 1933 and 45.
Okay, but that's another point entirely.
So basically go hit up Laney Berry on
Hit me up on
Facebook to hear all
Facebook,
about
but you can find St. Christopher School Lockdown by Classroom Graffiti Productions is the name of our company. We're on Facebook, we're on Kickstarter. You can see our old campaign, but we are still posting almost monthly updates. And on Steam, we just got greenlit, which is amazing. And And
When's the game coming out?
oh god.
Okay.
Oh,
never
God.
mind.
Thank
That's
you,
a
Troll.
horrible question.
No, we are aiming for, we're still aiming for a March 2017 release date, but due to various factors which we've only just been hearing about, which are very exciting, including the potential of voice acting. But voice acting by the production company who did The Wolf Among Us. They did The Wolf Among Us. They did The Walking Dead games, the Telltale games.
So instead of going woo, we should go ow.
Yes.
No, shut up, trolls.
No, but yeah, but we're looking around March 2017. Let's say that. We might be like a month or two late, but we will keep everybody very much informed if we are. And even if we were to be late, we will be releasing the beta for all of our backers to test in March. So
Good one.
and there is a demo out for anyone else who wants to
Yeah,
play.
go play the demo.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, I was
probably
playing that earlier. It's good.
See, that's the first
Oh,
time
you
Gareth has
did
played something.
research.
Yeah, Gareth has actually
Yeah,
played
well, I
something
thought I
that Fred
would.
and I haven't.
You played it?
Oh. I started playing it this afternoon. I thought, well, Laney's coming on. I'll check out her game and have a bit of a play around. It was good.
Yeah, now I feel bad.
So go
'Cause-
play the
because-
demo,
So
and
you
Gareth?
we will link to it in the blog post. And this is the ending spiel, of course. You can find our online presence at our website, mainly backseatdesigners.com. From here, you can find all the links to subscribe to our show, have a look at our spin-off show, Open Crowdsource. You can also visit us on Twitter and engage with us politically. We will likely shut you down. We're at BS Designers. We also have an open Facebook group called Backseat Designers. Simply, you're welcome to join. And we do have a Patreon. Incidentally, if you're a member of said Patreon, what we're going to do from now on is we're going to announce the weekly guest in advance. So you kind of get a head start if you feel like flinging money at us, which you can do at patreon.com/backseatdesigners. And finally,
you do this after I come on.
yeah. Yeah, well, you're welcome to share money with us as well. Finally, there is the YouTube channel if you listen to podcasts on YouTube. And why
You
would
weirdo.
you? It's at youtube.com/backseatdesigners. I believe that's all of it, isn't it?
Yeah, you were much better than Gareth at this.
Oh, fuck off.
Fantastic. Now, is that really the final thing you wish to say to the listeners, Doctor?
No. Another thing I wish to say is...
Wow, this makes my nipples hard.
I already said that. Well, say goodbye, trolls.
Goodbye, and thanks for joining us, Laney.
Yeah, for the
Thank
fuck of
you
it.
very much.
Say goodbye, Laney.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
You're
Our pleasure.
absolutely welcome, and you'll probably never want to do it again. And it's a goodbye from me as well, and we will see you next week.
No more for today.